The Hard Count is presented by BetMGM. As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM and we're using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for you guys each and every week. When you join BetMGM, you get access to a variety of parlay selection features like same-game parlays, live betting options, and more. Now, if you haven't signed up with BetMGM, use bonus code ON3, and you'll get up to $1,500 new player offer on your first wager with BetMGM, plus 50% off an annual subscription to the On3 College Sports Network. Here's how it works. 1, download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. 3, you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses, and your code for 50% off an annual subscription to the On3 College Sports Network in your BetMGM inbox once your first bet is placed. Just make sure use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Let's make it one for the history books. Let's make it legendary. Welcome back into the Hard Count. It is Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. Last one on the face of the planet. This is the show for college football fans that is, one, always presented by BetMGM, but two, you've been telling yourself lies for the better part of the last few months. And guess what? That's not stopping because spring practice is here. In fact, spring practice is supposed to be, if you do it right, the ammunition to give yourself even better, more refined lies. Because when it comes time for the games to actually be played, when toe meets leather, week 0 in Dublin, Ireland, you got TCU and North Carolina getting after it. When that happens, the time for telling lies is over. When that happens, there's actual games you can break down and make, judgment calls on as to what's true and what's not true. Right now, though, your team's undefeated. Right now, your team is as good as they've ever been before. Right now, your team is set to go win a national championship. And here's the thing. During spring practice, we tell you to believe that. We tell you to lean into that. If you're not drinking the Kool-Aid during spring ball, when are you going to drink it? All right? Now, ideally, November, December, January, when your team's playing in the postseason. But for all of us right now, we can drink the Kool-Aid. We will do that right now. I got some spring intel to jump into. The fact that we got spring ball rolling across the country right now and starting to roll even more throughout the course of this week and next week is a beautiful thing. We cherish it. We savor it. We got intel from Bama, Florida, USC, to name a couple of those schools. Also, it's a Top 10 Tuesday around here. We gave you our spring answers that would be the most impactful to hear for the SEC. This show, going to take a trip out to Big Ten country, give you our top 10 category there for, again, most impactful spring answers we could get from across that conference. And we'll finish up here explaining what LSU fans can expect in their new offense with Charlie Weiss Jr. running the show. Yes, Lane Kiffin's got his hands on the wheel, but Charlie Weiss Jr. is your new OC in Baton Rouge. What can you expect to see when that squad gets rolling here in the fall? Again, as always, presented by BetMGM. Told y'all for some time now, we're big on vibes on this show, and part of the ways that you can help vibes for your boy here is to use your college basketball boost token. If you see fit, if you would like to, there's a college basketball odds boost token out there for you. You could potentially put on the Cornell Big Red to take down Yale, number 1 seed in Ivy Madness, neither here nor there. We would be all about that on this side of things. And if you're about that as well, little college basketball, like I said, odds boost token over at BetMGM right now. But let's get this thing started and hot. Out there in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, spring practice has just started rolling. So we're going to keep a pulse over there on what happens with scrimmages and when they get the pads popping. But year 3 for Kalen DeBoer. What is the buzz we're hearing right now out of Tuscaloosa? Well, talking to some folks close to that program, one of the first things you hear is this is officially now Kalen DeBoer's roster. Because remember, he shows up in Tuscaloosa because Nick Saban had just retired, and the transfer portal, the tide had gone out. Tide wasn't really coming in. Like, Kalen DeBoer was really only able to lose players. There wasn't a ton of players he was able to draw from across college football. Like, you could go to Washington and take guys with you, I suppose. Could go to Arizona at that point in time and take players, but you didn't have the full transfer portal powers at your fingertips if you were Kalen DeBoer to build your roster. So year 1 happens, you missed the playoff. Year 2, you're able to stack the deck a little bit more. You go to the portal and get some key pieces. This year 3 in Tuscaloosa is truly going to be a Kalen DeBoer roster from top to bottom. All right. Also, I heard that Kalen DeBoer and this squad as a whole now, not Kalen DeBoer specifically, but Kalen DeBoer's football team, sounds like they've got a little bit of an edge to them. And you hear that across the country when it comes to spring practice, but specifically for Bama, the reason why that's important, think about the way last year ended for Alabama. You get embarrassed in the SEC title game against Georgia, still make the playoff, which we will maintain is the right move, and then you end up finding a way to win on the road against Oklahoma, but then you get embarrassed in the Rose Bowl. And Alabama fans in general just aren't really accustomed to, nor should they be, to being embarrassed. And so it kind of started some, not just Alabama fans, but college football fans in general, it kind of started some extra buzz around that program, and not the most positive in that sense. From what I've been told, this team has taken note of that, and they are using that when it comes to spring practice to have a little bit of an extra, just pissed off nature about themselves. Not saying they're all angry and got this massive chip on their shoulder, but there is a certain sense about themselves of, okay, we'll see. We hear all that talk, everything everyone's got to say about us right now. We'll see. We'll see. So I like that temperament around Alabama because it's quite frankly a different edge than I think Alabama team has had to have in the better part of the last 15 or so years, because there was a dude named Nick Saban who was there coaching the program. And they were just about every single year picked to be a team that was going to compete for or win a national championship. When it comes to the makeup of this roster, I told you, it's now a Kalen DeBoer roster. Specifically, though, this staff and this front office, which is a funny way to phrase it, Courtney Morgan, the GM out there, they have made quite an effort to be better on the line of scrimmage. If you're a Bama fan, you're saying, about time. Like last year, we couldn't run the football. Last year, we couldn't really stop the run the way that we're accustomed to stopping the run. They have added 21 players on either the offensive or defensive line. So that's including high school signees as well as transfer portal. They've also now, speaking to being able to run the football, made two really key hires that I think sort of flew under the radar. Adrian Clem is your new offensive line coach at Alabama. Richard Owens is coming over to be your tight end coach. Now, the reason why Richard Owens is, I think, sort of under the radar hire when it comes to running the football, look at his background. Coached at a lot of places where they ask the tight end to do a lot of run blocking. I think that'll be the same case for Alabama here in 2026. Not saying they're going to just put the tight end in line and have him only block, but I think when you look at the department Alabama needs the most help, it is running the football. It is commanding the line of scrimmage. So two hires there where Kalen DeBoer said, well, last year wasn't good enough. Last year we were nowhere near good enough. You go get two, I think, pretty impactful hires at that level to try to give that running game a facelift, if you will. Now, speaking of the running game, E.J. Crowell, true freshman running back for them, excited to see what he is during spring, comes in with a 5-star accolade next to his name. He's going to be someone to watch, okay? Because if you watched Bama last year, going to the whole point we've made throughout the course of this segment in terms of things we're watching during spring practice as they get rolling, Bama being able to run the football is sort of synonymous with what that program is. More specifically, dudes that tote the rock for Bama, being dudes, is also synonymous with that football program. So where E.J. Crowell factors in the first day of spring practice on the depth chart, I don't know. But I will say this. I think that he will have every opportunity to impact their output on the ground this year, would be my feel. Now, the run game is one part of this, but we all understand the story of spring practice, and y'all, I think the story of fall camp, to give you a tip of the hand how I feel about this thing, is going to be your quarterback battle. I've been told it's going to be a real battle between Austin Mack and Keelan Russell. I say that to get out ahead of this thought that, it's just Keelan Russell because he's the young buck. He's got the most runway. He's got, I think in some people's eyes, the most potential. Keelan Russell's going to win the job, right? I think that's the case. I believe that's going to be the end result here. But listen, Austin Mack, talk to people close to Alabama, he could have left. Like Austin Mack had some, from what I understand, pretty legitimate, also pretty lucrative offers on the table to leave Tuscaloosa. So if Austin Mack didn't think he had a good chance to win the job, he wouldn't still be there. Also, if they didn't think he was good enough to compete for the job, they wouldn't have brought him over from Washington. I know Keelan Russell's massively talented. I just told you I think he's going to eventually win the job for you in Tuscaloosa. But Austin Mack, going on his fourth year in the system. Keelan Russell's not in his first year in the system going into year two, but in 4 years, speaking that offensive language under Ryan Grubb, I think that matters, which is why I think in addition to his physical skill set of being 6'6", 235, 240, I think that's going to make this a pretty competitive battle. Now, I've said this before. I think if you asked Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb in a broom closet and gave them both truth serum and asked them, who do you want to be your starting quarterback, they would say Keelan Russell because of the investment, both financially and have to imagine just overall effort in terms of recruiting the guy, getting him to Tuscaloosa, and his skill set and potential. I think you'd like for him to be ready right now. But this is not going to be a thing where You just play the guy that you wish was ready if he's not ready. This is going to be a legitimate battle. This is going to be a thing where the best guy will play. And, I'm not of the idea that Kalen DeBoer is in any way, shape, or form on the hot seat. I don't think that's a fair assessment. But I do think if they don't make the playoff in 2026, it'll be uncomfortable. Now, define uncomfortable however you want to. The way I'm defining it is you start to have some more questions around Kalen DeBoer and what his Alabama team is. Okay, now it's hard to say what that would look like without actually having eyes on what 2026 is. The bottom line here is Alabama's not in a position to not play the best guy at quarterback. So whatever you think about Keelan Russell and him being the right guy for the job is all well and good. He's going to have to go earn it. Again, I think that's going to be the case, but this is a real battle, and Austin Mack still being there should mean something for fans that are keeping track of this thing. Now, the wide receiver room is something to monitor during spring ball as well. Ryan Coleman Williams now, new number, new name, has changed to his high school number he wore in number 1, has added his mother's maiden name into his last name. Talking to people close to Alabama, one of my number one questions around Ryan Williams was like, hey, where's the guy at mentally? Because you got to think, too, guy was 18 years old a year ago, had a huge true freshman season as a 17-year-old, but gets thrown on the cover of a video game after 1 year playing college football. He's expected to be a guy that, competes for Blitnikoff Award accolades, or at least being in that conversation, was expected to be a true go-to wide receiver for them last season, and it didn't go that way. Had trouble with drops. There was a lot of games where you're just like, where's Ryan Williams even at in terms of this game plan? We haven't called his name once during the broadcast. I was curious where he was at in terms of being able to handle, I don't want to call it a failure because that feels a little bit harsh, but it was definitely not the year that he thought he was going to have, and a lot of people around him, a lot of people that cover the sport, quite frankly, thought he was going to have. So when you have that kind of a public shortcoming when it comes to the kind of year he thought he was going to have, how do you handle that if you're 18 years old? What I've been told is he's in a good space. I've been told he's confident. I've been told that he's comfortable with what he's doing when it comes to his preparation. Ryan Coleman Williams, while last year wasn't the year he wanted to have, it's not a head game for him as far as the intel is out of Tuscaloosa, which is a good thing because we all watched Ryan Williams physically do whatever he wanted that game his true freshman year against one of the better defenses in college football against Kirby Smart in Georgia. So we know the dude can play. It's a matter of him being all the way right, again, between the years and going and having the year that he wants to have here in a quote-unquote money year for the guy, his third year in Tuscaloosa. But again, the intel is he's in a good spot, and if he's in a good spot, then I think Alabama in the passing game will be in a good spot because they're getting him the football. Noah Rogers was kind of an under-the-radar get for Alabama via the transfer portal. Came to Alabama by way of NC State. Before NC State, though, he was at Ohio State, recruited to Ohio State by former wide receivers coach Brian Hartline, who's now the head coach of South Florida. But I say all that to say, if you can't play wide receiver at a high level, Brian Hartline doesn't recruit you to his wide receiver room in Columbus. Now, he was productive last year at NC State as well, which should be noted. But they're excited about Noah Rogers. They think that he is a more well-rounded skill set than what Isaiah Horton was. Isaiah Horton obviously transferred out to Texas A&M, and that sucks to lose the guy, but the feeling is in Tuscaloosa that Isaiah Horton was more of a red zone threat than anything else. Noah Rogers, they think, can help him in a lot of different ways. So you add Noah Rogers to the Ryan Coleman Williams receiver core as well as Lottie Brooks. They think they're in a good spot when it comes to the wide receiver room, and that's going to be something to monitor here across spring practice because we can talk all about Austin Mack and Keelan Russell and the battle in their skill sets, but there's no more Jimmy Bernard. Right? I just told you, no more Isaiah Horton. If you're not good enough at the wide receiver position, then it doesn't really matter what you have at the quarterback position. Right? So that's something to watch out of spring practice is how the wide receiver room comes along. Super early on in spring ball, so there's not a lot to talk about when it comes to the defense or what the defensive line is looking like. That's something we'll talk about a lot more as we get through the scrimmages and get some more intel with the pads popping. I will just say when it comes to that quarterback battle, circling back for a second, keep a pulse on the way that the intel comes out of the scrimmages, all right, which is kind of a no-dust statement because, I mean, anytime you go to 11-11 competitive football, obviously the stakes get amplified and the microscope that you use to evaluate these guys, you kind of hone in a little bit more on their performance, if you will. But I'm really curious to hear who takes the first reps during that first scrimmage. Because now, it's put as much stock of that as you want to into that whole statement, but I just think that the first couple of scrimmages, who's rolling with the ones, and if that stays the same for those scrimmages, that'll give us a good indication as to the pecking order, all right? Which is not breaking news, but just something to keep a pulse on here, all right? So, in a summary here, with spring ball just now getting rolling out of Tuscaloosa, the roster has real questions, which we've talked about a lot on this show and been very adamant about how the questions we have about Alabama. They have real questions, maybe more questions they've had in the better part of the last 15 years, but they feel like, with it now being a Kalen DeBoer roster, they have real answers. So without a ton of intel right now, my feel around Alabama is still they're going to be a tough out. I mean, Bama, as much as they've underachieved relative to their own expectations, they still got 2 top 10 classes in-house. Kalen DeBoer has still been a college football playoff head coach at 2 separate teams, including Alabama. We'll see what they are in year 3, but if you're writing off Bama as just this easy win for your football program, which I don't know who's doing that, but if you were doing that, I would second guess. Bama's not dead. Bama's not going anywhere just yet. They're still going to be a talented roster. Got to figure out the quarterback room, but I mean, that's not an unfamiliar storyline for folks either when it comes to what Alabama is over the course of the last couple of years. Talk about Mac Jones versus Bryce Young. Talk about Milroe versus Ty Simpson. Talk about Ty Simpson versus Austin Mack and Keelan Russell a year ago. Bama's had a lot of quarterback battles, and it's worked out okay for them over the course of the last few years. So still getting the gears greased out there, but spring ball is on and popping in Tuscaloosa, and I'm all the way here for it. Keep up with everything over there over at Bama Online. If you want to stay dialed into all things Florida spring football, Gators Online is the place for you, all right? Now, I'm fired up for this, man, because Florida is in a spot where they're one of those places with a new head coach, okay? And we had their new head coach, John Summerall, already on the channel. So, one, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content around college football, but also because we got John Summerall on the show, and if we're talking about John Summerall or have him on in the future, don't want y'all to miss that. So, again, make sure you're subscribed. One of the headlines out of spring ball early on, there's a different energy when it comes to what's going on the practice field in Gainesville, man. And, that's honestly, for the better part of the last year or so, that's kind of what we've been asking for, right? I think for certain places in college football, there needs to be a certain level of intensity and fire and energy to truly activate what that place is supposed to be, which is a big reason why, quite frankly, Florida fans, I didn't think Lane Kiffin was the right fit for y'all. Because what is Lane Kiffin? Kind of California cool, kind of, more low-key, a little bit more dialed back, which I think is going to work great at LSU. We'll talk about them a little bit later in the show. But Florida, you needed someone who was going to be an alarm clock for your football program. By all accounts, that is what John Summerall has been at spring practice to this point. He is in his players' faces. He is screaming. He is running to every single position group, it sounds like, on the field. I believe John Summerall was quoted in saying, if I can't get to every single position group in the course of 25 minutes, what am I doing? I'm paraphrasing, but essentially he's saying, I'm the head coach. I got to oversee the entirety of my roster. Whereas, no knock on Billy Napier here, but Billy Napier was a guy that, according to folks close to Florida, would sort of just hang out with the offensive side of the ball, be with the quarterbacks. That was his specialty, so it makes sense. But John Summerall is injecting his own personality into Florida football. And quite frankly, that is exactly what they needed. And I'm excited to see how that bears out in the fall. But as a spring ball, you're going to get an intense version of Florida because you got an intense version of who your head coach is in John Summerall. The quarterback battle, it's still so early. We don't have a leader in the clubhouse, or we don't have a leg up in this competition when it comes to Philo versus Tramel Jones. I will just say this. People close to Florida are saying that Aaron Philo, while the thought was he's familiar with Buster Faulkner's system, he comes in with that pedigree of, knowing what they did at Georgia Tech together. He comes over following Buster Faulkner. He is not going to be handed the job. And if you watch John Summerall speak, during his interview with us, it's one thing to just say that, because I think every coach says that in college football. Hey, we're not handing anybody the job. You got to compete for it. You listen to John Summerall speak, you maybe believe it a little bit more because of just the way that he says it. But people close to Florida are saying, hey, listen, we're only watching a certain amount of practice here, but Tramel Jones, he looks like he actually physically has more juice than Aaron Philo, both as an athlete and throwing the football. So what does that mean? I have no idea. Right now, nothing. But if you think that Aaron Philo is going to walk in and just be handed the job because he's familiar with Buster Faulkner's system, I wouldn't be so sure. Physically, it sounds like the very slight edge right now, not leader in the clubhouse, not leader in the battle, the slight edge physically goes to Tramel Jones. Just take of that as you will, and we'll keep a pulse on that. LJ McCray, edge defender for Florida. He's a guy that we'll have more to talk about him when it comes to the pads popping in Gainesville and more intel out of scrimmages. But a dude who was a former 5-star, they've been really pleased with how he's transformed his body and just the overall intensity he's bringing. Florida also made some additions in the transfer portal on the defense side of the football. It sounds like that was taken the right way by LJ McCray. He's upped his game and is up in his intensity level, which is always a good thing to see. The receiver room, I don't want to say it's the story of spring ball because we're only a few practices in, but just the guys that you hear them talk about and the way they talk about them gets me really fired up for what's going on in Gainesville. Vernell Brown III has been given the number 1 jersey. Now, those of y'all that are Florida fans know what that means. Basically, if you wear the number 1 jersey, you wear a freaking dude, and you do things the right way. Vernell Brown, during what they call them, their gauntlet workouts, which is, I think, from what I understand now, their intense winter conditioning, like one-on-one competition kind of drills during their workouts. Vernell Brown did not lose a single gauntlet workout. All right, full stop. That in itself is pretty impressive to do anywhere, much less a place like Florida with how talented that roster is. Buster Faulkner also said he spends more time in the building than any wide receiver he's been around. Not any wide receiver on the team, not any wide receiver this spring, any wide receiver he's been around ever. Feels like a good thing. I'm just very curious to see what he looks like when they get rolling in the fall, because to have so much buzz around a guy during spring practice and to be given number 1 and to have that kind of a buzz around yourself coming out of winter conditioning with those matchup workouts they got going on, it's very rare, in my estimation at least, that people put their chest out and shout about a dude during spring ball and then you see them do nothing during the fall. Vernell Brown's going to be a dude in the fall. Feel pretty confident saying that here so far. A few practices rather into spring ball for the folks out there in Gainesville. Now, another wide receiver that beat Vernell Brown to be the fastest player, I believe, on the team is Eric Singleton Jr. Eric Singleton Jr., remember, was with Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech, had a great couple of years out there with Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech, then transfers to Auburn last year. And Auburn, just to keep it a buck, they were a mess offensively last year, so don't really put too much of that against Eric Singleton with what he didn't do. Still a good season, but I think it was below what he expected would happen when he went out to the Plains. Eric Singleton then declares the NFL draft, and we're like, okay, good for Eric Singleton. He's a player that's going to be pro, awesome. He ends up saying, no, I'm good on the NFL, actually. I'll follow Buster Faulkner to Florida. And like I just said, Eric Singleton, fastest player on the team, was clocked at 23 miles per hour. That's absurd. Like, you're 23 miles per hour on the catapult, you're probably sub 4.4. Is what Zach Alberverdi, who covers Gators Online, is talking about on their show, which they also do a great job over there on the YouTube channel. So get a membership at Gators Online on the fan site level. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel. They got a real deal intel in real time for you, so make sure you're locked in there. But Eric Singleton Jr. clocked that 23 miles per hour, the way that I understand it, in a race against Vernell Brown, who went 22.9 miles per hour. Bottom line, they're going to be real fast. Be a fast wide receiver core. Eric Singleton Jr. will be a big part of that. Buster Faulkner, as much as they ran the football last year at Georgia Tech, he has an air raid background. Like, that's where he comes from. So to put it simply here, a couple of fast receivers, a dude who can real deal go, and Eric Singleton Jr., that's going to help whoever's playing quarterback back there. Jaden Bob, there's not much intel on him right now because the pads aren't popping just yet, but looks good. I mean, 6'1", 230. I was told that he is the right blend of, like, good size, both measurable and then how he looks, but also he looks lean. So you're not sacrificing power for speed and vice versa. I expect him to be every bit as advertised when it comes to what he is during spring ball into the fall, and what he is last year, quite frankly, I think serves as a good jumping off point to what that running game is going to be in Gainesville. So one more note here. It's kind of a inside baseball thing when it comes to Florida. Florida has been way more open with how they've operated spring practice and the media access they've allowed than they have been in years past. Like, sounds like they're getting 40 minutes to watch practice, which compared to what it was previously, I think it was like 15 to 20 minutes. And of that 15 to 20 minutes, it was like a portion of that was even stretching. So Florida previously pretty guarded, no knock on them, just how they're doing business. But now, like I just said, way more transparent, way more open, even down to like how they're addressing injuries. They're just way more, hey, here's all our cards. Here's who we are. And that feels very much so in line with John Summerall and how he's running his football program. And just what you see is what you get. It's transparent. We're not going to placate or pander to anyone's perception of us or to look good on social media. Like, this is who we are. We're no nonsense. Take a look. In the media, recruits, take a look. This is who we are. And I keep going back to this. I feel like John Summerall is just such a real individual, which sounds funny to say out loud, but just is the case. I think he's so real. And y'all, you know what? Real still connects in college football, especially when it comes to acquiring talent. Like, NIL is a part of it. Brand is a part of it. But, like, I don't think John Summerall is putting on some front just to sound like a tough guy football coach. I think he's genuinely just who he is. And I think who he is connects with players. And if you disagree, look at the guys they retained. Dallas Wilson, Jaden Bott, Jaden Woods, all guys that could have gone other places. Heck, Jaden Woods went into the portal, took a visit to Texas. Texas is probably pretty good at recruiting too, huh? Number 1 class in all of college football a couple of years ago. Think they're okay when it comes to adding talent. The fact that John Summerall and the way that he connects with players is already seeing dividends on his roster right now is one thing. Y'all, think about if they start winning at Florida. Think about if they go have a marketable moment or two in the swamp this upcoming year. I mean, beat Oklahoma in November, a team that was a playoff team a year ago. You don't think that would resonate with guys that are considering Florida in the transfer portal or at the high school level? It's a lot from a little, but I think the approach John Summerall is taking to the Florida job with his transparency, his openness, his intensity, I think it's all going to age really well with Florida. And I think if they start winning too, it's going to be like Coke and Mentos. All right, so again, very early on, but I keep saying this. I think Florida is going to suck to play in the fall. Don't know if they're going to be a team that goes and makes the playoff and has this massive pop year, the first year for John Summerall and Gainesville. I don't know that, but I think they're still super talented, and I think that John Summerall and his personality being injected into that roster, they're just going to be a pain to play. And you add on top of that the fact you got to go play them in one of the toughest environments in all of college football in the swamp. So still early on, but the intel out of Gainesville, promising, dare I say encouraging, and we'll keep a close eye on that quarterback battle because I think that's going to be juicy to watch as they get scrimmaging out there in Gator Country. All right, now we'll go from one coach to the other here. What's the spring intel we're hearing out of USC so far? Okay, I'm always curious when I talk to people close to the program, especially during this time of the year, what the vibes are. Like what the unquantifiables are, because spring practice is spring practice, and there are some things that you can evaluate and get good intel on and take what you are hearing into the fall as like truly reliable data to go off of as to how good a team's going to be. But for me, one of the things I'm curious about is what I just said. What's the vibe around a team? What's the feeling you get when you're on the grass around the team practicing, or when you're talking to people in the building? Do they have a certain tenor in their voice? There's a certain temperature. If you think that's all woo-woo stuff, more power to you. What you're hearing about USC, though, is there's a different swagger, a different confidence, a different composure about themselves when it comes to how they're approaching the spring practice. And when you sit back and you hear that and process it, it makes all the sense in the world for a couple of reasons. One, USC was good last year. Now, they weren't as good as they want to be, but USC was a team that went out and won 9 football games, and they are a better showing against Illinois or maybe a few plays here or there against Notre Dame away from being a 10-win football team. Y'all, a 10-win USC last year makes the college football playoff, which would have been year 4 under Lincoln Riley. Okay, so they've got some skins on the wall. They're acting like it. The second reason, which is going to play into the next piece of intel we have from USC, is it kind of flew under the radar last year, but USC hired a new strength conditioning coach in Tremaine Carroll from Kansas State. That was like around the summer months last year, which the timing of it maybe was why it sort of fell under the radar and why it wasn't talked about. Also, it's a strength and conditioning coach, which is, again, college football sickos here. We're talking about a strength and conditioning coach. Make sure you're subscribed. Just all I'm saying. We're talking about that kind of stuff on this channel. Make sure you're locked in. Appreciate y'all. I happen to believe that your strength and conditioning coach is essentially the personality of who your football team is. Like, yes, the head coach is that as well. But I think, like, if you were to zoom out on a college football calendar, of the 52 weeks that your players have in the year, like 50 to 49 of those are spent with your strength and conditioning staff. That's not the case with your head coach or your position coach or your coordinator. Like, you are a reflection of who you spend the most time with. these players are going to spend the most time with Tremaine Carroll over the course of the year. And so to hear they have a different edge and swagger about themselves, I look at Tremaine Carroll and say, yeah, he's probably the guy you point to as to why that's the case. All right? Now, the other piece of intel I was alluding to, you hear this a lot across spring ball, but I think it's actually true with USC. I've been told they just look different physically. Like coming off the bus, they look more impressive. They look like they're a team that belongs when it comes to the Big Ten and when it comes to the top tier, being a college football playoff team. I've been told that they are more resembling what they need to look like on that front, okay? Now, part of that, I think, is Tremaine Carroll, what I just said. I think he is about the right stuff when it comes to strength conditioning, and I think that's a good move that they brought him to USC, by all accounts, okay? So that's one part of this. The other part of this, though, the reason why I think this is real intel to go off of, USC is adding talent at a different level too. Like the fact you can point to strength conditioning and the recruiting numbers indicating they're at a better level when it comes to the caliber of player. That's the reason why I think that the whole, they look different off the bus. Oh, wow, they added X pounds of muscle here. That feels more impactful because they've actually made moves at a process level to have this make sense. Like number one recruiting class in all of college football last year. Went to the portal and got a couple of guys that were developed in a big way. I think that they look different intel shouldn't just be brushed off the shoulder and say, oh, well, yeah, you say that every spring. The reason why that's important for USC, what's been the knock on Lincoln Riley since getting to USC? Especially his early years. Hey, they're not physical enough. Hey, they're a soft West Coast team. They're not going to hold up in the Big Ten. Well, if you don't look the part, then yeah, you don't have a chance to hold up in the Big Ten. The fact they have the personnel, some skins on the wall, a different energy when it comes to strength conditioning coach, I get excited about USC for those reasons. A couple of guys I heard about when speaking to folks close to that program, Alex Graham, redshirt freshman, playing nickel out there for them. Keep an eye on him because he's going to be really impactful in this Gary Patterson defense, the way that he runs things. Remember now, Gary Patterson puts that extra defensive back on the field. If you're going to have an extra DB out there, better be built like Caden Smith and better have the personality of a Caden Smith, not afraid to put his nose in there and play some run support, okay? Because if you're going to have an extra DB out there that's not about that action when it comes to playing the run, then it's going to be a lot of the same things people have said about USC in the past, which is, well, they're just not tough enough. Well, they don't have the right personality. We'll see, but Alex Graham I've heard really good things about when it comes to his physical development and also the way he's playing during spring practice right now. Him being a factor in run support for Gary Patterson's defense is going to be huge. Speaking of this freshman class, that is right in line with what you heard about what I just said a second ago, the unquantifiables, the swagger, the edge, the way about themselves. I've heard that this freshman class is kind of embodying that as well. The word that I was told was alphas. Now, I don't know if your freshmen are the alphas of your football team necessarily, but just guys that aren't afraid to act like they belong. Like Luke Wafel was a guy that was a very highly rated prospect for them on the defensive line. I've been told he's calling people out during practice. If you got freshmen keeping people accountable, that's a good sign. All right? Mark Bowman, the all-everything tight end from Mater Dei just down the road in Southern California. Still early on. We'll see what he is when it comes to actual, pads popping. But I've been told he's a big body that's physically developed. He's essentially a wide receiver in a tight end's body is what I've been told. The lower half of him, too, was something that I was told pretty intensely about when it comes to him being ready to play right now. Was told the dude's calves are just otherworldly. I'm here for that. It's spring practice. We'll talk about a dude's calves, a dude's lower body, because that's the time of year it is, all right? Trent Mosley, also in the Trinity League, also a Southern California guy right down the road from USC's backyard. He's been a name that's consistently come up during spring ball. If you are tuned into the socials when it comes to USC, they do a drill called Midnight Alley, which is essentially like Oklahoma drill on steroids. Ball carrier, a couple of blockers, try to get in the end zone. You get the gist of it. There's a play with Trent Mosley on the socials of him just running through a defender. I'm here for that. If a freshman wide receiver is running through somebody's face, that's probably a good sign. I've been told that they are already starting the game plan for him being a part of their offensive weekly strategy every single week during the season. Like, he's the dude they're going to make a concerted effort to get the football to. Think screen game, think intermediate passing game. They're going to get the football in his hands, all right? So Trent Mosley, an early unruly freshman, already making some waves during spring practice. Now, I told you the defense is going to be a big part of what USC is this year. Obviously, Gary Patterson, the new DC out there, who had been in different analyst roles and consultant roles across college football the last couple of years. I've been told he's rejuvenated, which is what Lincoln Riley also told us when we had him on the show. Totally just has a different excitement level to him. And again, I don't know if this is the way they operated at TCU, but he's got some different juice about himself being a DC, being a guy that actually owns the side of the ball again. So that's a good thing. I just think that with Gary Patterson now being at USC with different personnel at his fingertips than what he had at TCU, that should excite USC fans. And this is not to knock TCU, but like the caliber of player they were recruiting at TCU was, hey, we got to hit on the early eval side and know that this 3-star right now is going to end up playing like a 5-star for us. They did that a lot at TCU, quite frankly. But instead of, recruiting the low 4-star, high 3-star, now Gary Patterson's working with a couple of 5-stars on that defense, okay? So the fact that you're giving a cook better ingredients makes all the sense in the world to expect a better meal, in my estimation, all right? So excited about that. Going back to the offensive side of the football, Jaden Maiava, the name that USC fans know, he's started freaking quarterback, so you should know who he is, was asking about him and just the steps he's taken. The answer I got was just, hey, JD, his leadership. He's just continuing to take strides there, which is kind of what we heard is he seems more comfortable in his own skin. He's starting to step into that leadership role. I've been told that he now understands it is his football team. We will go as Jaden Maiava goes. Okay, now, no Jacoby Lane, no Mekhi Lemon. Tanook Hines is not practicing during spring practice. Not super concerned about that right now. But the reason why I mentioned that in tandem with Jaden Maiava is he now is in a position where he's got to really bring along this wide receiver room. Okay, one guy to mention, transfer wide receiver Terrell Anderson, big body guy, going to be a factor for them here in the fall. He transferred over from NC State. The reason why I highlight him, remember when Cam Coleman hit the transfer portal? And we're talking about all the teams that could be in the Cam Coleman sweepstakes and how talented Cam Coleman is and what he could be at different places. USC was one of those schools we mentioned being in pursuit of Cam Coleman. But then USC landed Terrell Anderson, and they were like, hey, actually, we're going to go ahead and say we're good here at wide receiver. Now, this is not me telling you Terrell Anderson is better than Cam Coleman, but the fact that they landed Terrell Anderson and then just said, hey, actually, I think we're set at wide receiver, don't discount that. That's not nothing. Something to just take stock of. So USC, a lot of moving pieces right now. It's really early on. I like the vibes I'm hearing, which it's spring ball. I'm here for vibes. I like hearing about this freshman class and some of the guys that are starting to, make some ripple effects early on during spring ball. And I love hearing that Gary Patterson's in a spot where he's got a certain edge about himself and a certain juice about himself to where I think you're going to get a steady USC defense. Now, how steady remains to be seen, but we understand now, like USC, the offense will probably never be the issue as long as Lincoln Riley's your head coach there. So if your defense is able to be consistent enough under Gary Patterson, you're going to have a chance to ultimately get over that hump being a college football playoff team here in 2026. So we'll keep a pulse over there at WeAreSC for all the spring intel. But again, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the intel on this side of things as well, talking about all things USC Trojans as well as all things college football year-round. Now, I told y'all this show, presented by BetMGM, listen, there's no better place to be during March matchups than Las Vegas. Also, home to the national title game for us in college football this season, neither here nor there. This year, college basketball fans can win a VIP trip to the Court of Legends event. Simply play sports bets, and your position on the leadership hopefully, will determine if you win one of the 25 grand prize packages. Just sign in to your BetMGM account, opt into the promotion, then start placing sports bets of at least $10 to climb the leaderboard. Make this March one to remember. Join the Court of Legends leaderboard and make it legendary. All the way here for that, man. Now, speaking of being legendary now, a couple of teams in the Big Ten trying to be legendary and win the national championship for that conference the 4th year in a row. I believe Ari Wasserman, coworker of ours here at On3, got the three-peat shirt. Maybe I'm wrong. Trifecta, something to the effect of, hey, the Big Ten has won 3 national titles in a row, and so the Big Ten Conference came out with a shirt of all 3 of those teams on there. I don't think Tony Petitti would be all that upset if they added a 4th to that group. Spring ball is rolling. What are the most impactful answers we could get from Big Ten country when it comes to what the buzz is coming out of spring practice? So everyone's got questions. Everyone wants to know this, that, and the other. I'm just going to go ahead and forecast a little bit. Hey, if we got these answers, those would be super impactful across college football and especially across the Big Ten. All right, so we got a top 10 here for you. Starting at number 10, how about UCLA making the show? Cato? A little A-clap for the folks in Westwood. I'm here for that. Hey, the Bobby Chesney era has started in earnest out there in Westwood, and I think an impactful answer that you could get out of spring ball if it ends up being the case, what if Bobby Chesney and the boys are ahead of schedule? What if they're just not having to do this whole year one reset, kind of repatch what the floor was last year and all these things? Last year was what it was. The Deshaun Foster experiment didn't go great. What if they show up, though, year one, and it's Kurt Cignetti-ish, which is asking a lot. The schedule that Bobby Chesney has year one at UCLA is a lot less advantageous than what Cignetti had year one at Indiana. But remember now, a lot of similarities. Bobby Chesney also at JMU, Kurt Cignetti from JMU. Kurt Cignetti took a lot of transfers with him from JMU to Indiana. Same deal with Bobby Chesney. In fact, 10 transfers from JMU following Bobby Chesney. It's not nothing. In addition, though, to those 10 transfers from JMU, Bobby Chesney has 32 other transfers for a nice round 42 new football players just from the transfer portal alone at UCLA. So that roster got a nice little facelift. I'm not saying UCLA is going to go make the playoff. I'm not saying UCLA is going to go, win 9 games even. I'm just saying, what if UCLA a little bit more frisky, huh? They got a little bit of extra juice out there in Los Angeles. Couple of games in November now that could have a pretty big impact on the college football playoff race itself. UCLA goes to Michigan the week before Michigan plays Ohio State. So if Michigan in year one under Kyle Whittingham, maybe they got a little bit of a look ahead to them. Maybe they're feeling good about their chances to make the college football playoff, and UCLA catches them slipping. I don't know. I'm just saying it's in the cards. And then UCLA will host USC to finish the regular season, which we're all the way here for. That's one of the better rivalries, I think, in college football, quietly. Neither here nor there. Hey, I don't know, man. Weird things happen in that rivalry all the time. USC, I told y'all many a time, I think it should be their college football playoff aspiring year. Should be that way every year for USC. But year 5 under Lincoln Riley, year 3 for Jade Mayava, more or less. I don't know. If UCLA were to spoil one of those teams' college football playoff chances, would be a shame. So if Bobby Chesney and UCLA is a year ahead of schedule, it'd be great for UCLA fans, but it could also have a good little ripple effect here on what the Big Ten is looking at when it comes to their college football playoff attendees from that conference. All right. Number 9, most impactful answer from Big Ten country post-spring practice. An answer we could get is, hey, Anthony Calandria transferred from UNLV, before that at Virginia. He gives Nebraska a chance. Same thing we said about UCLA. I'm not calling my shot for Nebraska to be a playoff team, for them to go win 9 games. Not doing that right now. We might do that later. Anthony Calandria can play some ball now. And I think that, is he on paper as talented as Dylan Raiola was? No. But Anthony Calandria, from a skill set perspective, I think fits a lot more of what Nebraska needs. Because Nebraska, on the offensive line last year, they were great when it came to run blocking. Pass blocking, not so much. Pass blocking, one of the worst teams in college football. Anthony Calandria, what does he do? A little shake and bake. A little Johnny Manziel to his game. I think that the way he ad-libs and the talent they have at wide receiver, if he can get him the football, if he can break, contain, eyes downfield, get the ball to a Ja'Cory Barney or a Quasi Gilmore transferring over from UCLA, give yourself a chance. And so if Nebraska has a chance, they're going to have a couple of teams here that I believe are going to be in contention for the college football playoff in Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State. Heck, sprinkle Washington on top of that if you want to. Nebraska would be kind of a party crasher, if you will, to this whole conversation in the Big Ten. I like Anthony Calandria. I love Matt Rule. We'll see what they are here in year 4 under Matt Rule, but I think Anthony Calandria and his skill set could give Nebraska a little bit more of a chance than they had a year ago, which could be interesting for the Big Ten. If nothing else, could be interesting. Now, the number 8 most impactful answer we could get out of spring practice in Big Ten country is that Damon Williams has got the team out there in Seattle. What do I mean by that? Remember this, during, I guess it was like the December month of the season. Maybe it was early January. No, it's December. Damon Williams announces via his social media, hey, I'm going to hit the transfer portal. Washington, thank you so much, but I'm going to go ahead and transfer out of here. This is coming like 3 or 4 days after he had just essentially signed an extension with Washington to be in Seattle for the 2026 season. So Washington's like, hang on, Damon, actually, no, you signed this. If you want to get out of this, somebody's got to pay us a pretty good chunk of change here. So if you want to leave, be our guest, but don't be our guest because you owe us some money here, Damon. So Damon Williams then circles back and says, hey, I'm going to come back to Washington. And I was the whole time saying, like, dude, I don't know how you go back to a place like that after you left in that fashion. After everyone, especially at the fan base level, was super upset with you, like, I don't know how that's gonna work for Washington when it comes to team chemistry. It's gonna be an awkward first day back in the locker room. Now, I imagine it was for Damon Williams, but if we can hear out of spring practice, like, yeah, that sucked that it went down the way that it went at the end of last season. However, things have kind of cooled out. Waters have calmed. Damon Williams is your starting quarterback, and he's not just starting quarterback. He's got real buy-in at the locker room level. That's super important because what I said a second ago, that fan base is not going to welcome Damon Williams back with open arms after he throws that first interception. Like, I promise you, as much as people want to see Damon Williams do well in Seattle at a fan base level, the minute he gives you something to root against or the minute he gives you something to be unhappy with him for, it's going to be very prickly. So to be able to have the locker room behind you when and if that moment happens, I think that is everything when it comes to stability for Washington. Because Damon Williams is a great player. There's a reason why LSU wanted him out of the transfer portal. There's a reason why Miami wanted him if he were to end up hitting the transfer portal. All right, so dude can play. Dude gives Washington a chance. The schedule's tough, but if he has the team out of spring practice, and that's not even a question mark, that would go a long way in Washington having a chance in 2026, in my estimation. Now, the number 7 most impactful answer we could get out of Big Ten country post-spring practice, it's Groundhog Day. Hey, Iowa, do we have something dynamic offensively to go off of? Notice what I did not say. I did not say, does Iowa have a starting quarterback that can take over a game? I did not say, do they have a wide receiver that can take a game over for you? I'm just asking, do we have something dynamic to keep an opposing defense honest, to allow us to be timely enough to score to beat some of these teams we got to beat to be a college football playoff team? Last year, Iowa, 6.7 yards a pass. Bad for number 92 in all of college football. Notice, I did not say good for, because that's not good. 6.7 yards a pass, that's atrocious. 92nd in all of college football. But what's the thing with Iowa? Every year, you know what? Defense is going to be tough. Going to be great in the margins. Going to be great on special teams. Y'all, the schedule for Iowa is so workable. Like at Michigan, Ohio State, at Washington, those 3 games. If you can go 1-2 in that stretch, tack on Iowa State to that equation. 4 games, if you will. Go 2-2 in that stretch at an Iowa State and the Cyhawk. If you can do that and win the other games that you quite frankly are supposed to win, in my mind at least, Iowa's 10-2 and going to the college football playoff. Like, that's what is hanging in the balance here of just having something to be a change-up pitch for your offense. Who's playing quarterback? We'll see. But if Iowa can have something offensively to be just something you have to account for as an opposing defense, that would go a long way in them being a team that can make the playoff here in 2026 and shake up the rest of the Big Ten, quite frankly. All right. Now, number 6, Penn State and where they're at. The answer I'm curious about with Penn State is, hey, is this roster still one of those rosters out of spring practice that we consider to be in the top tier of the Big Ten? Because similar to what we said about Iowa, I think you'd say about Penn State, the schedule's workable. Schedule is very workable. USC, at Michigan, Washington are the 3 games you circle. You go 1-2 in those 3 games and win the other games that you should win, you're 10-2 and you're in the college football playoff. So the reason why I ask about the roster is I don't really have any other questions. Like, yeah, Matt Campbell's in there. He's a great coach. Rocco Becht in there, solid quarterback. Roster at a base level should be good enough to be like an 8-win football team, right? You would think. Is the roster talent, though, at a place where you're better than just 8 wins? Which is a funny way to say it, but it's just genuinely how I feel about it right now. Like, is Penn State, with the exodus of James Franklin and what the transfer portal did to that roster, are they still in a spot where we consider them to be good enough to roll the ball out there talent-wise and not play their A game, play their B-plus game, but still not have it matter because guess what? We just got better players than you. Now, again, it's not going to be every single game. The games I mentioned, USC, Michigan, Washington, are all important, but no Ohio State on the schedule, no Indiana on the schedule, no Oregon on the schedule. 1-2 in those 3 games, you're in the playoff. Like, I was talking with Caden before the show about this. If James Franklin was there right now and the roster was still intact from what it was the year before, It's like minus odds probably in the preseason for Penn State to be in the college football playoff. Everyone made fun of James Franklin going 10-2. I said it when he got fired. Like 10-2 in modern college football gets you to the playoff. And we're at 12 teams. We're going to go past 12 teams here, I think, in a couple of months. So all that's to say is Penn State, talent-wise, still in a place to where they are better than everyone else in the Big Ten. That's not a Tier 1 team because you only play 3 of them, by my estimation, as it stands right now. At number 5, this is important where we go back to the thesis of this list, impact. All right, so Oregon, the answer we can get out of spring practice for them is that the offensive line will not be the Achilles heel. Now, it's the number 5 on the impact list because I think Oregon, even without this being an answer you get out of spring ball, I think Oregon's still probably a college football playoff team. I think Oregon still probably contends for a Big Ten championship in 26 because of everything else they have on the roster. But think back to the game that, that Oregon lost. They were to Indiana, and they were to Indiana because Indiana ate their lunch up front, dude. Ate their lunch. They were all over the place. They were rattling Dante Moore. They had trouble getting anything really substantial going on the ground. Oregon offensively didn't have a ton of Achilles heels, the wrong way to say it, but if they are good enough on the offensive line this upcoming season to where we're not having that same conversation post-end of season for Oregon, hopefully for the folks in Eugene, post-winning a national championship in Las Vegas, does the offensive line keep them from accomplishing that? Because I would make the argument a season ago, you want to talk about Dante Moore, talk about the team staying healthy. It's all very much so within bounds to talk about. But I think the offensive line was a big reason why Oregon didn't win a national championship last year because of what Indiana was in that front. So I want to hear out of spring practice, the answer you get out of spring practice that'd be enormously impactful is like, hey, Oregon, yeah, they lost some guys, but hey, they're going to be some dudes up front here in 26. They're resetting a little bit, sure. Lost some guys to the draft, sure, but they are not taking a step back. In fact, they're taking a step forward on the offensive line. If that's true, here we go. Here we freaking go. Number 4, most impactful answer we get out of spring practice, Ohio State is not worried about the defense. Because what are we talking about right now? Outside of the world of college football, we zoom out a little bit, just the football world in general, all the dudes that Ohio State's going to have drafted in the first round here in a couple of months. Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese. Now, there's probably going to be 3 Buckeyes drafted in the top 10 just from their defense alone. And so you'd imagine now that that's not an easy thing to replace by any stretch of the imagination. The thing with Ohio State for me, it goes back to these 10% conversations we have around the Buckeyes. What do I mean by that? For Ohio State, it's going to come down to a 10% difference for them to being satisfied. Like, Ohio State's probably going to be a playoff team this year, would be my guess. Schedule much more rigorous. Sure, we'll talk about that in the future. But Ohio State is good enough with how they acquire talent, with who Ryan Day is, with Julian Sain and Jeremiah Smith. They should be good enough to make the playoff. But making the playoff isn't what you signed up for if you're an Ohio State fan. Not what you signed up for if you committed to go play at Ohio State. You signed up to go win a national freaking championship. So my question is, does Ohio State's defense take that 10% jump from being a team that can make the playoff, playing for a Big Ten championship, to then going and getting back to the top of the college football world and winning the whole darn thing? My take on this is I think that's probably going to be true of Ohio State when it comes to the defensive side of the football. Like, Matt Patricia is an NFL mind. Made me look silly a year ago with what I said about Ohio State and questioning them. They also recruit NFL players. Like, Ohio State is never going to be one of the have-nots when it comes to personnel on either side of the football. Make no mistake about that. So if you can hear out of spring practice, hey, Ohio State's defense, yeah, they lost some pieces, but we're not worried. Then you go back to Jeremiah Smith, Julian Sain, Bo Jackson, the offensive line being back. You go back to all the things you get excited about, the flashy pieces about Ohio State, and what they could be over the course of this upcoming season. All right, so if you're not worried about the defense, Ohio State's probably a team that's very much so in the mix once again to be a national title winner. Not just contender, but winner. All right. Now, I mentioned this a little bit already when it comes to the spring intel we're hearing, but if we finish up spring practice, and you're talking to folks close to USC, and they're not talking about the defense at all as like a question mark, but more as a stable variable, here we go, dude. Here we freaking go. Same thing I said about Ohio State, I think is mostly true about USC. It's Lincoln Riley. It's a year 3 quarterback in Jade Mayava. There's a lot of pieces back on the offensive side of the football. Even with Jacoby Landon, Mekhi Lemon gone, it's still a super talented unit. I don't worry about USC scoring points. The question is, hey, can we get stops? And not just can we get stops, can we get stops against like the elite scoring teams in our conference? Like when you play Ohio State, when you play Washington, Oregon, Indiana, can you get stops against those teams? Because if you can, you're a college football playoff team. It's year 5. You should be a college football playoff team. Lincoln Riley, all right? Like that is what is required this year, in my mind at least. So speaking to, again, the answer we'd get out of spring practice when it comes to the defense, I don't want to be talking about the defense as not even as a question mark. I want us to be saying it with our chest, hey, we feel great about our D-line. Hey, we feel great about where the secondary is at right now, even with a couple of guys dinged up right now during spring ball. Hey, we feel really good about our defense. Now we got to see it all play out in practice, but I don't want us having conversations post-spring ball about, yeah, we'll see how they hold up. Yeah, well, you never know until you put on the pads, right? That shouldn't be the conversation with USC in year 5 with the way this roster is right now and all the guys they got coming back. So USC, if that defense isn't a question mark, they're going to be back in the college football playoff. I say back. They're going to be in the college football playoff for the first time in the playoffs' existence. But the better way to say it, they'll be back in the college football national spotlight, which is where I think USC expects to be, and rightly so. Number 2 most impactful Big Ten spring practice answer we could get, that the Michigan system likes Bryce Underwood, and Bryce Underwood likes the new Michigan offensive system under Jason Beck. What did you hear me say every single Sunday reacting to a Michigan game last year? Hey, Bryce Underwood looks good. You see flashes. He's still a process, or a prospect, a process, if you will, in terms of what he's going to be from what he was as a prospect. I don't think Michigan did him any favors offensively last year with how they called it. Jason Beck comes in, though, and you look at the skill set that Devin Dampier had at Utah, you say, okay, I see some similarities, but Bryce Underwood, I think, is a way better thrower of the football. If we're getting out of spring practice, and this is the answer you get about Bryce Underwood, do you have too many other questions about Michigan football? I don't. Like, Michigan running the football should not be a question mark right now because of what they've been at a personnel level, because of who Kyle Whittingham is and what he was at Utah. You question the defense? I don't think you should, for the same reason. Like, the tough guy persona is still there for Michigan football. But if you have something to go with that, with a dude at quarterback and some real deal like presence downfield and a vertical passing attack, okay. No further questions, Your Honor, when it comes to Michigan. Now, the question within that you would also have answered is, if Bryce Underwood looks good out of spring practice and the system is meshing with him, he's meshing with the system, someone's got to be catching the football for you, right? And I've openly been like, hey, we'll see what the playmakers are for Michigan. Well, if we're hearing definitively after spring practice that Bryce Underwood looks awesome, you don't look awesome at quarterback without having something to go with you at the wide receiver and tight end positions. So again, that's a big couple of questions to have answered. But if that's the case, now the reason why this is number 2 on this list of most impactful answers, Michigan's a team that competes for not just the college football playoff, but like, what does Michigan do on their way to the college football playoff? Like, that schedule is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I'm flirting with this take right now. Who's to say that Michigan doesn't play Ohio State for a spot to go to the college football playoff for both teams? Now, I could see both teams being in the college football playoff, but I'm just saying now, Michigan being in a different place offensively because of Bryce Underwood and his maturation would be huge for the Big Ten in terms of getting Michigan to the playoff, but also in terms of what it would mean across the rest of the regular season for Michigan's gauntlet. All right, so keep a pulse on Michigan's offensive progress this spring. I think Bryce Underwood and what he's going to be this year is, I'll say it right. Right now, Bryce Underwood and his potential is better than anybody else's in college football in terms of what we haven't seen and what we know he can be. I'll leave it at that. The number 1 most impactful answer we could get out of spring practice comes from Bloomington, Indiana, the current home of the national championship trophy in our sport. Hey, what if we hear that Curt Cignetti has another one? And when I say that, what if we hear that Curt Cignetti once again went to the portal and got an absolute dude at quarterback? Because as good as Curtis Rourke was, as good as Fernando Mendoza ended up being, I don't think anybody really had penciled in, hey, Fernando Mendoza, Heisman Trophy winner, going to lead Indiana to a national championship. Nobody was saying that in the preseason, and it makes sense. But here's the thing. Josh Hoover coming over from TCU, full breakdown already on the channel, so go check that out. he comes over with more proven production, with more like good football plays under his belt than Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza threw 40 touchdowns last year. He had never thrown more than 25 at Cal in a season. Josh Hoover, the last 2 years in the Big 12, was number 2 in the conference in terms of passing. Like, he's got some skins on the wall. Now, TCU threw the football a lot, so there's a reason why he had that kind of production. But the point in all this is, if Kurt Cignetti and Mike Shanahan sprinkle some of that pixie dust on Josh Hoover, they ratchet down the interceptions, and even up what he is as a downfield passer, Indiana could go back-to-back and win a national championship. Now, I'd be surprised if we see that happen routinely in our sport. It is super difficult right now to go back-to-back in the 12-team era, but I'm not backing down from that statement. If Josh Hoover were here out of spring practice, hey, listen, man, Mendoza was awesome, but they're not taking a step back with Hoover. That's on the table. That is absolutely on the table. So the Big Ten, y'all, I'm flirting with this idea right now. It's super early. I'm flirting with this idea of the Big Ten having 5 college football playoff caliber teams. Now, obviously, a lot of those teams are going to play each other, so we'll see how many they get in. But do not be shocked if the Big Ten continues to keep their foot on the neck of college football and gets 5 teams into the playoff. A lot of those questions being answered could end up in that being the reality. Okay, so let's wrap this thing up. What can you expect from the new offense in Baton Rouge if you're an LSU Tiger fan? Because Lane Kiffin comes in with this offensive acumen and this great track record of offenses that he's coached, but very quietly now, and not so quietly if you follow Lane Kiffin on Twitter, he has said, hey, this is Charlie Weiss Jr.'s offense. He's got his hands on the controls here. I got my hand on the wheel, but like Charlie Weiss Jr. is driving this thing. He's got his foot on the gas pedal. He's downshifting. He's cruise control and all those things. This is Charlie Weiss Jr.'s offense. So, Tiger fans, what can you expect outside of more points and more competency than what you had a year ago? To call a spade there. We'll break it down right now. If you're an LSU Tiger fan, if you're a college football sicko, if you just love talking ball, man, make sure you're subscribed right here. It's college football year-round. It's the month of March, and we're getting into the nitty-gritty of LSU's new offensive system. Gosh, I love us. When I say us, I mean us together on this show, so thank you for that. We'll get into the basics here, the basics of this offense. If you were to define the genre of Charlie Weiss Jr.'s offense at LSU now, it's RPO. Okay, like musical artists have different sounds, whether it be pop, hip-hop, country. Charlie Weiss Jr.'s genre, his sound is run-pass option, okay? Reason why that's important. The R is at the beginning of RPO when you talk about breaking down the overall genre of this system. They still want to be a run-first offense. Now, we'll get to the passing game in a second, but this whole thing is going to be built at LSU by toting the rock. Big reason why they went to the portal and got someone the likes of Jordan Seaton. Big reason why you have a mobile quarterback in Sam Levitt, okay? They are going to make a concerted effort to run the football at LSU, and hallelujah for that. If you're a Tiger fan, you're saying, thank goodness. We expect to impose our will on teams. Bringing in Lane Kiffin, who's kind of this more, like I said earlier in the show, California cool. You kind of think about points and quarterbacks. It's going to still be a nasty offense that wants to punch you in the face. Now, it won't be all they do. They'll still chase the big play, but the fact that you got Sam Levitt to run the system, I think is huge. I think it's absolutely huge because the RPO, the run-pass option, which I'm not going to go back and the whole break down. Well, the RPO stands for, I already said run-pass option. I'm not going to do the whole breakdown that I think analysts do over the course of every single football game you watch on TV. The reason why it's important to get Sam Levitt to run the system is he's familiar with running this genre of system from his time at Arizona State. The RPO, in my estimation, the biggest thing you got to have at quarterback from a skill set perspective is football instincts. Like, so much of it is feel. You got to feel that linebacker sinking back, so you give it. You got to feel that linebacker pressing up against the offensive line, so you let it go. Like, a lot of it is just feel, and it happens so quickly when it comes to making your decisions to where if you went and got a guy who was, equal arm talent to Sam Levitt but had never played in the RPO system before, I'd be a little bit concerned. Go back to Jackson Dart in his first year at Ole Miss. Kind of struggled a little bit, right? And it's not because Jackson Dart isn't super freaking talented. The guy ended up being a first-round overall pick, but he had never played in a run-pass option system before. Meaning the instincts that you need to have to play the position in this system, he was still developing, still honing, and really hadn't dialed up all the way. So Sam Levitt, yeah, he's not going to be all the way full go during spring ball, which you hate. The fact that he's not having to make up for those football instincts in the system, I think is huge. So going back to what I just said, RPO system, running the ball first, but we got a quarterback who can dish it pretty well as well and knows how to operate this rocket ship that Charlie Weiss Jr. is calling. Going back to the passing game, Charlie Weiss Jr., yeah, wants to run the football, but he's going to take some big swings, man. Like, they are going to hunt big plays in the passing game. Last year at Ole Miss, top 10 in college football in yards per pass, right around 9 yards a pass. The reason why it's important for this system, that's going to keep the third level of the defense you're playing, you would like to think, pretty honest. Now, defenses can be aggressive and try to be deceptive and bring pressure from the third level or be aggressive, and that's all well and good. But if you do that, understand you take someone off the back end to account for those big plays. And if we're running the RPO system, it gives our quarterback a lot of agency at the line of scrimmage or during the play to pull it out of the running back's belly, let it rip downfield, and explosive play is bound to happen in Baton Rouge, and Tiger Stadium's on fire, okay? So with the way they hunt big plays, you would like to think now it's going to keep those safeties a little bit more honest in how they have to play from snap to snap, which then goes back to what I said a second ago. That gives us a better picture as an offense to run the football and do what we want to do in that department, okay? Now, I would say in addition to all those things, you watch Ole Miss a year ago, one thing that stuck out to me, especially during the Georgia game, the first time they played them, Charlie Weiss Jr. is not going to turn down a profit pre-snap. Like, if you give his receivers a good amount of cushion, if you're playing off 5-6 yards or a little bit too much for his liking, he's going to give his quarterback all of the opportunity in the world to take that cushion throw, to take that anytime route. If you give him space, he's going to make you pay for it. This team, this roster, this system in itself is going to attack space and get the ball in playmakers' hands quickly if you don't give them the proper attention pre-snap. Reason why I think that's important for this team right now, go look at some of those portal additions they got at the wide receiver position. Jace Brown from Kansas State, Eugene Wilson from Florida, a couple of guys that are elite when it comes to the YAC category, yards after catch. Like Eugene Wilson at Florida, we'll see if he does it at LSU, but like on his back play every single game, he had the word YAC written there, which again stands for yards after catch. So if you're going to give Eugene Wilson some extra cushion and we give Sam Levitt the freedom to throw the football to him anytime we see that kind of cushion, I think it's going to create for a lot of, at worst, ideal second and third down distances. At best, a lot of explosive plays, somewhere in the middle of that. So they're going to attack space. If you want to give this team too much cushion, they will take it from you. But in that same breath, what I just said a second ago, they're going to hunt big plays. If you want to try and eat up that cushion, which I think Georgia did a lot the second time they played Ole Miss, they're going to do what they did and take daddy hacks downfield and have a lot of explosive plays and let their wide receivers and quarterbacks go try and play ball with you on the back end. So watching the Georgia-Ole Miss games from last year, both Volume 1 and Volume 2, I think give you a pretty good idea as to what the personality is of Charlie Weiss Jr.'s system and what it's going to be at LSU. Give us space, we'll take it. You want to try to take away space and eat it up and just play one-on-one, that's great for you, but we think that Lane Kiffin's one of the better guys in the sport when it comes to putting rosters together. LSU's going to give him all the resource ability in the world to go do that, so we're going to have burners on the perimeter to where when you try to eat up that space for us pre-snap, we'll attack you downfield, like I just mentioned. So at a personality level as well within this offense, there's a lot of different ways you could break it down and get in the complexities and nitty-gritty of it. Hard to do that at a super effective level without actually having video footage that we're allowed to show you. Allowed key word there. YouTube would copyright strike us pretty quickly if we were showing you broadcast footage. Neither here nor there. Charlie Weiss Jr. in the system does a phenomenal job of keeping it simple for his quarterback and his offense, but at the same time making it complex and uphill for you as a defense to try to get organized pre-snap. What I mean by that is he has like 8 different ways that they run a lot of the same plays. So a good example of this is I'm grinding some clinic tape, getting ready for the segment for y'all. I watched like 45 minutes of Charlie Weiss Jr. just breaking down a flood concept, which is in all actuality a pretty simple play that everyone in college football runs. He just had like 8 to 10 different ways that he ran it, whether it be the way that they aligned formationally, whether it be what they did pre-snap with eye candy. Like, it's the same play he's running. So the quarterback is reading the same thing during the play, but the defense is seeing different pictures. And oh, by the way, on top of that, we're running with tempo to where We're giving you a different picture. We're giving you something to worry about. But at the same time, now you have to get aligned before we snap the football because we're going quick here. So you got to communicate well, get organized, get reorganized. The whole time now our quarterback is ready, set, hut, looking at the same thing. He's not having to get up to speed of a new play. He's looking at the same thing he was before. So to put it simply here, the magic within the system is the simplicity of it. They're going to do a lot of complex things, like I said, formationally, pre-snap, eye candy, all that's well and good, but they're really going to be lethal at it because for the offense, we're not rewiring ourselves. We're having to do too much schematically for ourselves thinking-wise to have success running this play. That's on you as the defense to figure out the wrinkles and the intricacies of it all. So bottom line here, LSU, they're in a great spot offensively, which you already knew when Lane Kiffin was your head coach. Bringing him over from Ole Miss and Charlie Weiss Jr. to call the plays, I think that's huge. I think it gives Lane Kiffin the ability to focus on being more in a CEO role of LSU football, which I think, quite frankly, his first year on the job in Baton Rouge, they need to reinvent themselves, to give themselves a new personality, to get all the transfers to gel correctly. Having someone to run the offense that knows how to run the offense the way that Kiffin wants it, and Charlie Weiss Jr., I think that is going to be crucial for them in year one as they try to make the playoff in year one. And having a quarterback in Sam Levitt who's familiar with the kind of genre of offense they want to run in year one is just as important. So LSU fans, expect points. Expect fun times in the end zone with how you get in there, whether it be running the football, throwing the football. It's going to be a mix, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch the Tiger offense once again be dynamic. I don't know if it'll be 2019 dynamic, but it'll be dynamic enough to, I think, wet the whistle of what Tiger fans expect, all right? So get at us in the comment section. Let us know the next system you want broken down. I think the next one up for us on this side of things is probably Buster Faulkner at Florida. But if you want someone else, you want us to go and break down someone's system, explain a new offense to you or explain, a new defense to you, let us know in the comment section. Subscribing helps us see who's really dialed into the channel. And quite frankly, we'll give those priority when it comes to deciding who we want to go to next for breaking down these schemes. But it's March, man. It's March, and we just talked over an hour of college football. So if you're a sicko for this sport, we love March Madness. We're here for March Madness. But if you're a sicko for college football year-round, make sure you're subscribed right here. Cato on the ones and twos, myself, JD PicKell. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.